All right, Pete. Well, how about we get started? We want to respect everyone's time. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, let's do it. Let's get
All
to it.
right. So
Am I
you guys
Pete in
should,
your am I Pete in your repeat this time, or are you Pete and
yeah,
I'm
right.
repeat?
We're definitely switching it around this time. Yes, absolutely.
Sounds good.
So we thank you everyone that's joining us today. We really do appreciate you making the time and scheduling this as part of your day. Uh, we are your hosts, Pete Newbig and Peter Hernandez. Today we are going to talk about KPIs, how to run your business to optimal efficiency using KPIs. And so we will jump right into it. And there we go. We are your hosts. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into the agenda. So why are KPIs important? What are the best practices? We'll talk about examples. And Pete Newbig, as owner and operator of Empire Industries, will give us some examples on KPIs, how he used them, and how he was able to solve different issues, specifically to maintenance when it comes to using the right KPIs. So, Pete, would you like to introduce yourself real quick for anyone that's on this call that may not know you?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. My name is Pete Newbig. I am the co-founder of VPM Solutions, but before that, my prior life, I was co-founder of Empire Industries. We started that business in 2012, sold it in 19, and then sold it to Mind Management, where I took on an EVP role for about a year and a half, and then rolled out VPM in June of 2021, and been doing that full time ever since. And the main reason why I built VPM was I just believe, I believe passionately that there's a better way, and we can give people jobs across the world, but also support the local business owners and help them with their profitability.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm not going to bore anyone with my details. I'm Peter Hernandez, been in the property management industry for about 10 plus years, maybe almost 12 now. And so you guys have maybe seen me or we've seen each other, we've run into each other at conferences. So again, not bore you with any of those details, but I am here at VPM now and excited about the opportunity and what VPM is doing to really set themselves apart from any of the traditional placement companies. So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
How do we use KPIs, Pete, to hire effectively?
So KPIs are kind of the caboose when you're hiring. At the end of the day, you want to know if that person is doing a good job or not. And the way to determine that is through key performance indicators. So let's kind of work backwards first
Let's do that.
before we get into KPIs. All right, Pete.
Let's do
So
that.
the main thing is no matter how well your KPIs are, if you don't have the right person in the right seat, it's not going to work. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into this because this is a whole course on its own. Matter of fact, I built one. We have it on the VPM Academy. It's free. It's called How to Hire, Train, and Manage Your Team. And so if anybody's interested in that, but I just want to go real high level here. The first thing you have to do is get the right person on the boat, so to speak, right? The proverbial boat. And then
Yep.
you do that through core values, right? So I know that based on my core values that this is the right person, but just getting them in the organization, just because they're the right person doesn't mean that they're going to be very successful. The second thing you have to do is you have to understand what it is that you want them to do, right? That's where a job description comes in.
Mm,
Because not only do you not only is a job description for you, but it's for them. If you don't know what they're supposed to do? How do they know what they're supposed to do?
right.
And then you have to put them in the right seat. And the way you do that is with a personality profile. I like DISC, but there's other ones out there, right? And so based on their personality, they know exactly what they're supposed to do and how to do it, and then they have the right core values. That is going to be a success. That's going to be a recipe for success. And then to make sure they are rowing in the right direction, right? That's where KPIs come in. And I'll give you a quick story. I know, Pete, we're kind of, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to give a quick story. So many of you on here may or may not know Leon. Leon works for VPM Solutions as the onboarding technician. Well, Leon worked for me at Empire, and then he worked with me at Mind. So when I started VPM, I knew Leon had the right values of what I was looking for to hire somebody. So I brought Leon in. And I'm telling you this story because I preach this stuff and I still get it wrong from time to time. So I bring Leon in. And after about 8 or 9 months, I talked to my business partner. I go, hey, Ross, I don't think Leon's working out. And Ross literally just laughs at me. And he's like laughing. He goes, I go, why are you laughing? He goes, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. I go, okay. He go, well, what's Leon's job description? I said, oh yeah, I haven't really given him a job description. He goes, so you don't know what he's supposed to do. I'm like, well, I guess not really. And he goes, what are his KPIs? And I'm like, I don't know his KPIs. So even I, who teaches this and has run his business this way, fall into the trap of just hiring somebody because they're the right person and hiring too soon a lot of times because I'm hiring before I have the job description in handy. And so you can make these. And so if you hire the wrong person, we're gonna come back when we build the whole KPI later on. I'm gonna come back to it on why that could be a challenge.
Okay, awesome. I do like the story. So it's funny that you mentioned that even when you preach this, you could easily fall into the habit of not doing it. So I love how you referred to KPIs as basically the tool that makes sure that everyone is rowing in the right direction. So I think I love that example. Now, real quick, of all these four that you mentioned on here, Pete, which one do you see PMs or just anyone in general making the biggest mistake with?
Yeah, well, on all of them, they make
Okay.
mistakes on all of them, but a lot. It starts off with core values. A lot of people think it's kind of like witchcraft or it's like hocus pocus type stuff. But core values do matter. And if you don't have core values in your business, you do. It's just that the team has core values, and core values are meant to be pushed down from the top, not up from the bottom. So
Oh,
that would be the one that I would say that they make a lot, they make, and then of course a lot of times they hire people without a job description. They say answer phones, and then the second thing is all other duties assigned by manager. That's a big challenge because you have no idea what they're supposed to do.
yep.
VPM, I see a lot of people hiring before they actually know what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got a question on here. I think it was back to the resource that you mentioned. It says, what was that about how to hire and train your team? You mentioned it
Yeah,
was okay, so I
it's a
think
good
it's
question. VPM has what's called the VPM Academy. So if you create a free profile, you have access to the VPM Academy for free.
mhm.
It's not just for remote team members looking to learn about the property management space. It's also for property managers, property management company owners, or anybody else who's in the space. And that is a free resource. It's about 45 minutes of me. So you might fall asleep a couple times. Don't listen to it while you're driving.
So let's take a dive in here. We talked about KPIs being the tool that helps measure if everyone is rowing in the right direction. Now, KPIs, performance indicators, we know what it stands for. It's a way to quantify or measure people's performance.
Performance. Exactly.
So
So the question you're gonna ask me is, well, why would I want to do that? Right.
yes,
So why would I want to measure performance? Well, for most of us on here, we probably didn't get good grades in school and we hated report card day. Right. Now, for some of us, we loved report card day because what does report card day tell you? It tells you how well you're performing or how
that's right.
poorly you're performing.
Hmm.
Right. Now, if we were all, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and we all went to Harvard, we probably all loved report card day. Right. But at the end of the day, the report card tells you how you're doing, and you can, So another example is like, okay, the Cleveland Browns played the Steelers last night, and the game ended, and there was something called a scoreboard, right? The scoreboard tells you who won, tells you everything. Well, your KPI is your scorecard or your scoreboard for your team.
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
why is it important? Is because the scoreboard tells you how well they're doing in their job. Now, the magic is going to happen. Like, what are you actually measuring? And we're going to get into that in the next few slides here, right?
Yep.
So, what you measure really determines because you could be measuring the wrong things. And I'll even give an example of how I did that incorrectly, right?
Okay. A
All right.
quick question on that point though is do you ever find that operators, business owners shy away from putting together KPIs because they think it's a negative effect on their team?
I have heard that. I don't think it's a negative effect. If you, again, go back to your core values, go back to
Mhm.
setting the right expectations and getting the right people. Part of my core values always a company is I want people who want to be measured. I want
Yep.
people who want to do a good job.
Yep.
So that would fit in with your core values. If you are somebody who doesn't like to be held accountable, you're probably going to hire a bunch of people who don't like to be held accountable. And
Yeah.
I can't help you with that. I mean, as far as owning a business, you have to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
Just is.
And the thing is, I think we've talked to so many people, and they all share the same story, which is we all want to know whether we're doing good or we're doing bad. And so the only way to do that is, KPIs, and your team wants to know, right? Our teams want to know if they're performing or underperforming. No one wants to know that they're underperforming and not understand how or why, right? So key KPIs are super important. All right.
Yeah, go back real quick. Just go back to that, Pete, because you brought up a really good point. The good point is most companies do a yearly annual review.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then so you're told whether you did a good job or a bad job with, and then your whole, your performance review is based on that. But nobody tells you each week or each month if you're doing a good job or not. In the case of Leon, I was managing by feeling. You see here, managing by feeling.
Mm-hmm.
By KPIs, you're not managing by feeling anymore. You're managing by numbers. So I just
Numbers.
wanted to put that in. And then, of course, in January 1st, we all say we want to lose weight. And we track what we eat and we exercise more, and what gets measured gets better. What gets measured gets done.
Yep.
When you have correct KPIs, your measurement, things will get better for that job role.
Absolutely. All right. So let's move on here. Where are we? Best practices.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, a lot of people are confused about, okay, well, all right, KPIs are great, Pete, but like, all right, where do I start? And are there any rules? And so there are some rules about KPIs. So the first one is everyone in the organization should have a KPI, right? I mean, so and each role should have a minimum of one and a maximum of 3 KPIs. One of the mistakes I made early on when I owned my management firm is I was running portfolio based. So that means that the managers were in charge of everything. Well, what happened was they had like 12 KPIs. And so when everything is important, nothing is important.
Yeah.
And so you can't really pick all 12 KPIs. Also, another measurement might be if I have 12 KPIs, they might be doing too many things.
Yeah.
So if you have job roles out there with lots of KPIs, either A, you might be micromanaging, meaning you're managing stuff inside the KPI, not the true measurement, or 2, they might be doing too many things.
Yep. So I want to touch on 2 of the points that you have on here. And the first one is the KPI goal can and should be changed. Now, I think that's something that people they figure they do it once and they just never have to, revisit that list again.
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple examples on what I mean by that, right? So when I was and we'll talk about this in the example, but when I first designed my KPI, I went to my customer satisfaction for maintenance. It was like 3.2 out of 5. Well, I wanted it to be 4.3. Well, you're not going to go from 3.2 to 4.3 in 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to measure at a weekly or a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, you have to make the number achievable. It's like saying I want to lose 40 pounds in 1 week. Not going to happen, right? But if I want to lose 40 pounds over the weeks, right? I want to lose 2. I want to get here. I want to get here. I want to get in this. So there's milestones. So the same thing can be said for KPIs, right? So the KPI for us was go from 3.2 to 3.3. That was the first one, right? So what do we have to do to make that get to 3.3? And then we went to 3.5 and 3.7. And eventually we did end up at 4.3. And at some point you have to determine, is that the best you can do? Is that achievable? And then if you have multiple KPIs for that role, once they hit that 4.3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months in a row, you can say, you know what? They got that one. Let's go ahead and measure something else that's important. So you can swap it out and then put something else in place.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why revisiting that list to be able to see how they're doing, how they're performing, and if there's something else that they maybe need to add to that list. One other item here is do not confuse reporting with KPIs. So touch on that if you would.
Yeah, that's a big one. And it still even confuses me from time to time, right? So there's general reporting that is information that you need to know. but not everything on that report is something that is a quantifiable measure of somebody saying they did a good job or not. I'll give you the example. In maintenance, we had certain KPIs that we're going to go over, and I had certain reporting, right? So I wanted to see on a report, like all the work orders without an invoice. That's not a KPI, that was a report. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through the example, Pete.
Perfect. Okay. And then the last point on here is where I'm as I'm talking to more of these operators and business owners, I want them to understand that again, a KPI can in fact be viewed as something positive by their team, especially when you can create a bonus plan based around that.
So I'm a huge advocate of creating bonus structure around KPIs, especially with virtual team members. So I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of that. And so if you hit the KPI, you get a pat on the back and a firm handshake. And if you exceed the KPI, you get a bonus.
Love it. Yep. Love it. All right. Here's the example. So you've been touching on this for a little bit. Let's break it down.
Yeah, so I thought this would be good to actually do like a real world example. All right. So when I owned Empire, we were a growing firm and we were getting our butts kicked on maintenance to the point where I was running a business for about a year and a half where our churn rate was 34%. And I can hear the gasps already if they were not muted. That's just huge. That is a huge churn rate. And when I dove in, I knew what I knew, but I dove in anyway, and I realized it was all due to maintenance. Our maintenance was just not very good. It wasn't very good at all. And so when I looked at it, I looked at the life cycle of a maintenance ticket, and you can get inundated with the amount of KPIs with the life cycle of a maintenance ticket, right? And I think the next slide will show that. But I came up with these 3 KPIs. Percent of work orders open greater than 15 days should be 7%. Over 7 days should be 15%. So you see the numbers are inverted. And then the CSAT was a 4. So I lied. I wanted a 4.5 out of 5, not a 4.3. All right. And so I'm going to talk to you guys about how I came up with those particular KPIs in the example. If you hit the next slide. All right. So when I was looking at everything that happens in a maintenance, you can see all these things that have to be done. Okay. So let's just kind of go through it real quick, right? So a resident like puts in a request. Well, we have to respond to that request, and we have to respond within a certain time. Then we have to troubleshoot. Then we have to dispatch. Then the vendor has to accept the ticket. Then the vendor has to schedule. Then the vendor has to complete. And this is like on a good ticket, right? This isn't where it's over the maintenance requirement, or we got to get 14 estimates. This is just basic. Then they have to complete the ticket. Then you have to complete the ticket, send a customer satisfaction, and then of course there's a bunch of work orders. You got to stop them from falling through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people would say, all right, well, I want to KPI the response time. It's got to be less than 3 days. And then I want to KPI the vendor acceptance. And I want to KPI the ticket completion. And I want to KPI the customer satisfaction. And they want to KPI each and every step. Well, now I just gave you 5, 6, 7, 8 KPIs. What I just tell you, right? So what I decided was what we found out was the longer a work order is open, the less satisfaction the resident has. When the resident is not satisfied, then there's a few things that happen, right? Number one is they don't renew the lease. And that is a good time for the owner to determine that he's going to go try, another management company. Number two is they put a Better Business Bureau complaint or a real estate commission complaint or an online review. All of that takes effort and time and resources from your team to remedy that. And so we said, okay, if we can close tickets in an appropriate time frame, then our satisfaction will go up. Residents will be happier. They will not circumvent and call the owners and find the owners. They'll be happy to put positive reviews, and they'll stay longer. And that's exactly what happened, right? So now I had to restructure my team. We had to really focus on those 3 KPIs. So if you hit the next slide, I think we have one more slide on this. All right. So now Pete, you say, well, Pete, you just picked those 3 out of the hat, right? So I picked them because we knew that with those three metrics, we knew that we would get the desired result that we were looking for, which was less churn, happier residents, longer staying, and all that good stuff, right? Well, I can't just pull the number out of thin air, right? How many times, this is one of the challenges I had early on. It's like, well, I want to know that number, so I just pull it out of the air. Well, you have to be able to gather the data. Like, if I can't get the data, how am I going to measure against that number that I'm looking for? Right. So we were using Property Meld at the time, and Property Meld had a create date when the ticket was created and a close date. Right. So what we looked at is we had a create date, and that date we can easily measure through downloading a spreadsheet in CSV. It took about 5 minutes, and that's the amount of time it should take you. If it takes you 4 hours each week to go get the data, that's too much. It's got to be easily achieved. So we were able to download the data and just do some simple math to say, this is the average time that a open work order, right? So we didn't look at closed, we looked at open. So it had to be easily accessible. The team has to actually have permissions to access the data, right? Because you want the team to gather this data, and you want the team to put it in a spreadsheet, and you want the spreadsheet to be conditional formatting, meaning if they hit the number, it's green. If they don't hit the number, it's red. Think about it as, Peter, if you were like in Nashville and you had a sales team and you wanted to know if your sales team was doing good or not, and they were all over the world, you'd have to just, I want to click on a spreadsheet. I want to be able to see high level. Green means good, red means bad. And when you meet with your team, red typically would mean, let's put this on the issues list and let's talk about how to solve that challenge, is what it comes down to.
Yep. And that's why exactly why having the data be easy to get or gather, and then easy to understand and use, then requires, at the end of the day, less time that you spend on that, right? Because your last point here is you can verify and spot check the data, quickly.
Right. So in our at VPM, I'm sorry, at Empire, our policy was no work orders get closed until we receive photos, before and after photos, and an invoice. Okay. So this solved one of our challenges. One of our challenges was that vendors weren't giving us invoices until months later. And then I wasn't managing the property because I told you about our churn rate. And that means that Pete had to pay out the vendor if you want to continue doing business with them. And so remember I told you core values matter, and this is why. Because when I tell people about this and I tell them how we solved our maintenance, the first question they ask me all the time, they say, how do you know they're not going to just close work orders just to get that bonus? Right? And it's a fair question. So the answer is twofold. Number one is, I hire people based on core values. So I hire based on integrity. I hire based on people who want to win, but they want to win without cheating, right? So your core values protect you from that. And then second, I trust but verify. I was running reports on all closed work orders that did not have an invoice. So I can verify it. I can verify this. So when you're looking at the spreadsheet with your team on the KPI and they're hitting their KPI, you should also be verifying through reporting that they're not circumventing the system. That makes sense. All right. And so it's important to spot check the data. Now, KPI, so that's an example of a KPI at the job role level. Now, KPIs at the job role level. Now, I put a bunch here as an example, but really they should only be 1 to 3 at the job role level. Some of those will roll up into the departmental level. So you should have KPIs for your department. And then, of course, you should have company KPIs. If you're running a leadership team, the leadership team should be looking at company KPIs that kind of roll up from the job role and the department. Now, the company should have 3 to 7 company KPIs. That's across all the divisions. But your department might have 3 to 7 as well. And then, of course, your job role has 1 to 3. So as the company, what you have to think of is, if I'm on a deserted island, I'm the CEO, do I really care about the number of social media posts? Well, no, but the department head might care when he's managing the social media person, but he doesn't even care about maybe he doesn't care about social media posts, right? So what is it at the company level that I'm looking for? So in this example, like cost per lead, because that kind of may generate how much money we're spending on how many leads we're getting and closures. It could be whatever it is that you deem super valuable at the highest level.
Yeah.
Then your
No.
department heads deem it at their level, and then you have the job role stuff.
Yeah. No, and this is a great example to help everyone understand that exactly.
Yep.
All right. Well, we talked about resources. You know, we wanna make sure that we have something that everyone that's on here today can reference. All of this information is free. You can look at some of the resources that have been created specifically for property management. The 1 minute manager, interview questions, KPIs, personality,
Yeah, and if
profile
they take out
tests.
their phone and scan that barcode, that is 101 KPIs for specific to property management. So it goes and it gives you the company KPIs, departmental, and just about every job role known to the property management industry, and that's all free as well.
Very cool. So, guys, if you are still watching, you can scan that QR code, and it'll take you straight to that part of our presentation. So, you can also get a hold of us at vpmsolutions.com, or you could email me at peterh@vpmsolutions.com. We hope that we presented in 20 minutes information that you can use, and again, the resources are available and there for you to take advantage of as well. KPIs is something that people constantly struggle with, especially I think because they create way too many or not enough, and then don't know how to make these specific to positions. So the resources on our website will help you with all of this. We keep these webinars to 20 minutes because we want to provide valuable information, but not take up your entire day. So we appreciate everyone that was on here today. We thank you all very much. Pete, thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it.